Using Photoshop, we are going to create an artwork that is based on the work of the 21st century's most famous and influential street artist, Banksy. So who is Banksy? Nobody actually knows. So the work of Banksy is pretty fascinating. He works in urban environments such as Paris and London, Berlin, and other cities. He works in a context where there is already a lot of history, public art, and then also graffiti type art that's just tagging sort of art, but also in reflection of the environment. And sometimes it's political or environmental or social activism, and other times it's maybe silly or playful.
This is so beautiful. And I didn't even care about genres because it was really
When in France, we stayed in the 20th arrondissement, which is near the 11th arrondissement. Elise surprised us with a visit to something that was very meaningful for her and turned out to be quite meaningful for us, which was hidden in the back of this restaurant and nightclub is a memorial of sorts. One is a plaque and one is a mural by Banksy. So unfortunately, with Banksy's work, it's often stolen, and we were lucky to see this in July of 2018, only 2 months after it was put up, saved by the restaurant and nightclub, and then it was actually stolen in January of 2019. So at this point in our class, we're going to talk and also do some visual research to figure out what your message and your idea will be in your Banksy-like street art project. For our Banksy picture, we're going to use a landscape format, which will be a Photoshop file. Open it up to and make it 12 inches by 9 inches. So 12 inches is the width. Make sure you're on inches. Once you have the file open, go ahead and save that so that you've got your first save done and you've titled your file. This is a good practice to always be in. Save that. The next thing is you should look for an image online of what you would like the background to be. So this could be a wall, a doorway, that sort of thing. And please make sure that you are getting an image that is copyright free. I'd really like it if you could subscribe to a stock footage website so that you can get those images that are high quality resolution and not be stealing other people's images. The next thing that we're going to do is place your embedded image into the 12 by 9 inch file. Once you've got that done, make sure you can pull that image to fit the space. If you use the shift button, it will keep all of the proportions. So once you've got your background in place, it's time to look for an image that will give your project some meaning. In this case, I decided to get raccoon pictures. I looked for something with a white background. I made sure my picture was copyright free, and I named my layer. Good practice. You're not the only one who looks at files when you create files with a design group or with a photography firm. Next, so that's a very good practice. Take your general selection tool and make some fairly good selections, not worrying too much about some of the edge work on some of the smaller stuff. But I do recommend going in tight into your image and not always working full screen. In this example of selecting a croissant, I use the direct selection tool and use the minus selection tool to fix stuff around the edges. Then go into select and mask, and I like just using that button, but you can go into select and then select and mask. And once you do that, there are different filters that show up that help you make adjustments to the selection. I like using this old-fashioned one that's a red one called an overlay, and I prefer that one. When you're making your selection, you can use the Refine Edge tool that's on the left side of your menu, and you can adjust the size of that brush. Then you go in around the object, and the masking tool, whether you're on onion skin or overlay, will make your selections much more refined. The feather tool changes the transition to a more gradual transition from object to background. Make sure that in the bottom left corner you output to new layer. Here I'll do it again and show you the results. New layer, and there we go. And you can see that the background and the image are separate. And what's nice about this is that the image is not gone. It's not like you cut it. It's still there if you should need it. Then you can go into eraser tools or erase background tools and touch other things up around the edges. Here is another example with an image that I had been editing. And again, you have to have a new layer, and then that layer is separate from the background. So here we are back at the raccoon image that I'm turning into the Banksy-like commentary. And what you will want to do is create a duplicate of that layer. You might even create several, because then you can experiment and see what will work for you in terms of making some adjustments. I went into adjustments and did threshold. Threshold will immediately get rid of the color information, and it will also allow you to create some really dramatic changes in the black and white qualities of your image. So that's a really good thing to try out for one of your layers. So you can see how I built this image up with different layers. I've got a couple different layers with my raccoon, and those layers are things that you can make adjustments to. As you're seeing here, I'm flipping through things on that particular layer. Difference, exclusion, different selections under layers, and you can kind of see how the whole thing is built, and you can still make adjustments to the type as well as all of the other elements that you add on. Here is a review of the steps. You're going to use the quick selection tool in most cases to get most of your object. Don't forget to go in close to whatever it is you're selecting. Remember, you can use the minus selection tool to get rid of stuff that's on the outside that you don't want. For this, you're still making a pretty general selection. Then go to Select and Mask. And using the red overlay, you can make selections around the edge that are much more precise. The system learns as you go what is the background and what is the foreground. Once you have your selection with any photograph that you're adjusting, it's a really good idea to make a duplicate of that so that you can go back to your original. So that's one thing that's a really good practice. Then in each layer you can try different things, and if you don't like it you can go back or you can get rid of that layer without harming the rest of your document.